Ow. You look at okay.
So, also we should say periodically, just application also maybe immediate. So, if there's any active comparison of the type, we have to have it. Anyone can multitask.
Yeah, I know what you're at. So basically, this is the default page for Alto to do the edit.
I'll just cut and paste into it.
See, I just did it. Can you see my test? Nope. There it is. Anyway, I think we. Oh, several people are in the Jabber. That's good. I hope so. Don't know yet. Can somebody maybe watch Jabber? I mean, I have it here, but since I'm sharing, my co-chair is not here. Can somebody have a look at Jabber as well? Yeah, just I mean, if somebody raises the flag or something, I'm trying to keep it here up as well. But you know, when you're a single chair and people present and you follow technically, and you need the next slide, blah blah blah. Just let me know. I mean, just go to the mic first. Yeah. Right. So I think we should start. I don't know where our area director is, but I think she would come. Can you hear me? Yeah. You are Dawn, right? Yeah, good. I think you were last time. I met you sometime. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. So I think we should start. Welcome everybody. This is the Alto working group. My name is Jan Seedorf. I'm chairing this working group together with Vijay Gubani, who unfortunately cannot make it. He will join the Meet Echo, and I'm supposing he will also join via Jabba. So he should be online shortly. Yeah, without further ado, if you participate in this meeting, this note well applies to you. I hope you all know about the note well, and I think you know what it means. But just to recap, it basically means that if you are aware of any IPR related issues, if you are aware of any IPR that relates to what we present here and talk about here, just you must make the working group aware of it. If you don't know what it means, please read those RFCs there closely. It basically sets the ground roots for how this meeting works. So we as chairs, let me just work this. There's our area director. Hi, we went ahead and started. Is that okay? Yeah. Sorry. That's just how we are. Okay, so it's a good idea that we went ahead. Yeah, good. So anyway, the status of the working group. Vijay and I had a Skype call just the other day, and we were talking about how we see the working group. So we really want to focus on finishing the charter items. I think this is what we mentioned also at the last IDF meeting, because a lot of this work is actually quite mature, and we have not been dragging it along, but it has been going on for several years actually now. And so we really want to focus on finishing the charter items. So this time we set up the agenda very much accordingly to that. So the charter and milestone items come first. And we really want to have a good time discussing those so that we can make sure how they are, what are the next steps, so we can really move towards finishing them. And everything else on the agenda is kind of, we of course allow agenda time for other interesting new topics, but that's best effort basically after the charter items. Vijay and I actually really have the goal of finishing the milestones by or at IETF 101. So just as a look ahead, it's quite likely that both of us will not make it to IETF Singapore, so we will probably have a virtual interim meeting instead of the next IETF meeting, just for people interesting and for people doing the work in the working group. But we both plan to be at IETF London. So our goal is by that time to finish all the milestones. Comments, Richard?
That's a quick question. So when you say finishing, what does it mean? Submit last call working group, or?
Let's leave it at finishing right now. I wouldn't nail it down so much. I mean, if we have something that is close to working group last call and we're waiting on one final review or something that should work. I mean, you know, when let's say if one item is not finished, we can always finish it without having working group meetings. But we really want to concentrate this meeting and the one we have in London on finalizing the milestones we have. And obviously, yeah, I mean, in principle, finalizing means done with working group last call. But let's see how far we get. So, yeah, here's the agenda. And as I was mentioning before, we pretty much did the agenda in a milestone-oriented fashion. So the first, I think, 7 or 8 presentations are really the milestones we have, and we want to move those ahead. And then afterwards, we have, I think, 3 or 4 other presentations on new interesting stuff or stuff that has been around, but is not chartered. So that's, like I said, more or less best effort for now. Of course, we're interested in those discussions. Anybody want to bash the agenda? No, that doesn't seem to be the case. So what's the progress? In last IETF meeting, we actually adopted 3 working group items for actually chartered items or milestones that we have. I think the CDNI request routing, and that's partially my fault, and also the unified props, the authors actually made updates but forgot to make an IETF working group, make the new name with IETF, but we now did it. I think, Richard, you did it for both documents. So now that is actually done. So here are the milestones, and what Vijay and I did when we prepared this meeting, we try to give you an overview in the next few slides on how we stand with respect to the milestones. The submit cost property extension document from our perspective is done, and Sabine actually will not present on that one today because multi-cost is now an RFC editor queue. So from the working perspective, we are done with it. There are just minor nits here and there. I mean, I'm following the emails, but it's not really something we need to discuss here. If you look at the other charter items or milestones that we have here, from alternative server discovery document down to cost property extension, here you see the documents we have. The Alto performance metrics, we think needs some more working group scrutiny, but the other ones that you can see are cost calendar and especially also incremental updates and XDOM, we would like to move to working group last call during this meeting. And Vijay also sent in mail on the mailing list, and I've seen some nice discussion, and we actually had a lot of reviews lately also for these documents. I'm not so sure about unified props. Maybe when you present, Richard, maybe that probably needs also a little more time until it can go to working group last call. So that's not entirely correct here. Path vector is also something that probably needs a little bit more work. And the CDN request routing is also something that needs a little bit more work. So basically, we have 6 core milestones. 3 of them we want to move to working group last call, and we actually, and I've seen on the email list lots of agreement. They are quite mature. So let's see how the discussion goes. And then we have 3 more working group milestones, where we actually have working group items that by the next 2 IETFs we really want to get done. Yeah, any other business, any other comments? Richard, yeah.
Okay, Richard Young. So I do want to say a couple of things. It would be, one is roughly when's a good time to talk about the interim meeting for IETF, because I think you mentioned you and Vijay cannot attend, likely cannot attend IETF 100. So roughly what time schedule is. And second issue I do want to mention is we're running a design mini summit with people from Caltech, from a lot of people. And time we mostly around mid-August in Los Angeles, related with Alto, input actually related with Alto design to apply it in the context of LHC. So I don't know if, for example, can even merge these 2 meetings into a single one or not. I don't know when's a good time to talk about this business. So maybe in the mailing list or this one. So therefore, that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I would encourage you to mention the stuff you're doing in regarding the large-scale applications, and it's a workshop kind of thing you're talking about, right? To mention that on the mailing list explicitly so that people are aware. Regarding regular Alto interim, Vijay and I were thinking about something well, instead of a physical meeting in Singapore. So we were thinking about something in October, or Mirja knows the deadlines more, but in principle, you can have a virtual meeting instead of the regular one. You just need to set it up on time. We have to check with you. But basically, we don't want to meet if we don't want to have a physical meeting in Singapore, because most likely we will not be there. So it will be around that time frame. That's what we are planning. But we can have discussion on the mailing list. If you have enough people that go for a different meeting already earlier, for sure. We can have that. We can do that. Want to comment?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend to go exactly for the time frame, because everybody is so busy with the physical meeting, right? So you can go a few weeks earlier.
Yeah. Of course. No, that's what I mean. that's what I was trying to say. Normally, when you do something instead, you don't do it during that week, but you do it whatever 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after. But I think there is an official. No, you can do it whenever you can do whenever you want.
You can have an interim anytime. So
Okay.
I would actually recommend you to do it rather between now and the next meeting. Because
Sure,
that's what
but
people have
probably
more time.
closer to the next meeting. So probably October time frame is then what we're thinking. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if there's no other business, anybody wants to mention, I think we should go quickly to the first presentation. That's cost calendar. So Sabine, I hope I have your slides. Are those the correct slides? How do I get rid of this? Hold on. Full screen? Is that full screen?
No. Or maybe not. No, you should go one. Yes, that's right.
Good. All right. So go ahead.
And then later.
Yes.
So yes, this is about the latest updates on coast calendar since last IETF. So next slide. So previously it was version 1 that we updated on February. We collected, since the last meeting, we collected working group feedback. And so the diffs between the two versions are mainly on design updates for backwards compatibility and compatibility with multicast, draft organization and rewarding and cleanup. And by the way, great thanks to the whole working group who sent me their feedback. Next slide. Okay, so we did a couple of minor design updates on the IRD resources first.
Sorry.
Oh, that's nice.
Sorry.
So the calendar attribute object in a resource entry now has a mandatory member called cost type names, which is an array of one or more elements indicating the cost type name in the IRD entry to which these attributes apply. This is typically in case you have you want to require multiple metrics and also to be self-contained. So next slide. So as an example, here for example, and also to avoid repeating things, you have in the resource description, you have so this is the cost type names that the IRD supports, and you can have calendar attributes for some of them with, for example, 1 hour and 24 intervals applied to those two metrics. So next slide. Okay, so then we have other design updates and the request format. So that we set now a rule on the members in the request. So given that n is the number of requested metrics, so we introduce an array of n Boolean value that just say whether or not you want this very metric in a calendar mode or not, and with a couple of rules saying that the array must contain exactly n Boolean value, otherwise the server will return an error. And if this field is not present at all, so it's interpreted as you just don't want any calendar for any metric. And this is also for consistency for clients supporting multi-cast calendars and single-cast calendars. So next slide. So another minor design update is in the response format. So in the filtered cost map responses, you have a new mandatory member, which is the cost type names, again, just to be self-contained. And and it will actually be an array of cost type names, just in case if you have several metrics. We also had added the same rules as in section 4.2. So if the client request does not provide a member calendar, or if it provides it with a value equal to false for all the requested cost types, then the auto server response is exactly as specified in the base protocol and in multi-cost. So you just get the values without a calendar. And if the value of member calendar is equal to false for one of the given requested cost types, the auto server must return for this cost types a single value as specified in the base protocol. So next slide. So then in the response format again, so for the endpoint cost service, you have now new members, so the cost types and the multi-cost types, depending on which one you pick. And again, for multi-cost compatibility. And so if there is an agreement about this design, so the next step will be to harmonize the text between the filtered cost map service and the endpoint cost service. Just basically copy and paste to have a homogeneous text and rules. So the next slide. So yes, then we did some draft organization updates. So we dropped the very lengthy section 5 with the use cases, because all these use cases are actually put in other sections. And there was a section 4.3 that was a recap of rules related to Alto cost calendar, which was dropped again as well. And the text was moved to the section 2.2 in the design part on compatibility with legacy Alto clients. So next slide. Yes, and we did some rewarding. Well, in particular, we changed the example metric name, which is available bandwidth, because this one is actually used in the performance metrics draft. And this is actually a metric that is used for links. So we prefer to pick something called bandwidth score, which is something that is abstracted. Again, it's an example, but we illustrated it is as a completely abstracted score, say between 0 and 20 or 0 and 100, just to tell you how good the quality is with respect to bandwidth availability, with the awareness that ultimately these metric names may have to be changed to nonsensical names such as shoe size, which is the case, for example, for the RFC to be multi-cost. So next slide. So yes, so we may have a couple of discussion items. So shall we consider Alto calendar for link metrics, such as available bandwidth? So then we would have to add a little bit of text to specify the difference between link level metric and end-to-end path metric. Shall we also consider Alto calendar for endpoint properties? Do we consider endpoint properties whose values are changing over time, such as, I don't know, color, location, connection time, with respect to time periods such as morning, noon, afternoon, evening? And there was a working group's question. Is it possible that the Alto server has several options of different combinations of time interval size and number of intervals for Alto client, allowing the Alto client to choose or pick for more fine-grained cost calendar? My first answer was yes, if the server can afford the workload, it may propose different calendar attributes for the same cost. Like you have a menu of calendar, you pick whatever you want. But then the issue is that, first of all, the client request should stay simple. And this would actually require to change the design and format of Alto requests and responses. And so the basic, one of the design options was really to just give you a menu and you pick what you have on the menu and you don't try to too much to remodel the option. So, well, I'm open to the discussion, but my point right now would be to make it simple.
Oh, Sabine, could you stand a little bit closer to the mic? I think somebody asked on Meet Echo that they cannot hear you so well.
Okay,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it better now?
I think so.
Okay, so next slide. So the next steps will be final text harmonization between filtered cost map and endpoint cost map service. And hope to move it to working group last call. And great thanks to Dawn, Lee, Chen for fruitful discussion and review feedback.
Okay. Thank you, Sabine. I mean, any comments, discussion? Richard?
Yeah, Richard Yan, and so can I go back to one slide? Oh, so here's one opinion, and about, of course, so we can talk about offline as well, is several options of time interval size times product essential number of interval. Essentially, is I think the design question here is, do you think we should allow the server to define different levels of granularity? Right. Essentially, is, for example, the server say I can provide 1 minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour units, and therefore still tell you the whole thing about 1 day. So I agree, and in the discussion that the request should be simple. So therefore, a lot of options are probably complex. So it's okay, for example, for the working group to define the following, for example, design decision that the server should always give the finest green result, and therefore the client can do the aggregation. Would that be a reasonable compromise? Basically means if I'm a server, I can really collect data at a 1 minute interval. I will provide 1 minute, and you guys can essentially do the aggregation to gather 5 minutes or 1 hour or 1 day interval. And I think the size overhead may not be too big, because the cost calendar by itself is not a giant data, probably blow up even though by a factor of 5, but overall it's small, so therefore may not be too bad. So therefore that's my opinion. I don't know if other people here have different opinions.
Yeah, I fully agree with that option. I mean, you can schedule your requests and you do your aggregation, value aggregation on yours by yourself. Yeah.
So this is Jan with chair hat on. So in order to move this forward, I think if both of you agree and there's seems to be no other opinion in the room, why don't you just state that on the mailing list, and if nobody objects, then we move ahead like this. For me, the issue is rather how many iterations do we need to get this done. So do you guys agree that you are close to getting done? And I mean, if you resolve these issues, you would think it's ready for working group last call afterwards, correct?
Yeah, regarding this question, I think it will be very important to say that what the Alto server provides as a time interval length is the finest that it can provide. You should not expect it to provide you a smaller time interval.
Right. So I guess the only tricky here thing is, do we want in the document to have this essentially requirement word? For example, should. For example, do we say the server capital should provide the finest granularity? Or we say may, or maybe we don't say anything at all. And understanding is this is the finest grain for this particular user. That's the only thing I see potentially will be
right
decision.
No, and I completely understand the issue, but so the first question is, are there opinions in the room? Obviously, if they're not, I think it seems to be that you and Sabine, Richard, agree So maybe we can have a little bit of discussion on this on the mailing list, and you just state your way forward. And since it's a working group item, then everybody has a chance to comment. And once we are done with this issue and the other minor issues, Sabine, that you mentioned, then we can move to working class call. It doesn't seem to be completely finalized, but I would still like to have a hum in the room of how many people think that after these issues that Sabine presented are done, think that the document is ready for working class call. I can take my chair hat off. I think there's been lots of discussion on the mailing list. This document has been around for a while. I mean, we definitely agree on the approach, and it seems to be mature. So I just would like to know if people agree that once these issues have been resolved, we can go to working plus call. Yeah.
Cool. You can do an hum, of course, if you want to, but it's your judgment as a chair to say this is ready for working plus call.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of my powers. I feel good. But I believe in democracy. So right. But since we're here, I think we should still do a hum. Again, we're anyway only humming off if people think, these are minor issues, and then we can soon move to working class call. We as chairs anyway think, Mirja, we posted this already on the list. So yeah. So can I? Who's in favor of moving this soon to working class call? Please hum now. Who is not in favor? Please hum now. Okay. So we have the backing of the working group, which is always nice. I can sleep much better now. So yeah, if there's no further discussions, Sabine, thank you very much. So I think this is from a chair perspective or from a moving forward perspective, I think this is what we wanted. It seems there's still some minor issues, so please resolve them and post how you resolve them. I think so. Richard, what you were saying is these are design choices that the working group needs to be aware of. So please make them explicit on the mailing list and do an update. And as soon as you make the next update, we can go to working plus call, and we will handle it on the mailing list then. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other comments on this document? If not, then Sabine, you can stay. You still have a slot for context, right? Calendar context.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be clear, this is a different document, but since it's very related, we put it on the agenda right afterwards. It doesn't make sense to present it later on because it very much relates. But for now, the document you just presented right now is the one we see as the milestone, and we have to see how we move the other one forward, right? But you agree with it, right? That's yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Okay. So that's cost context, right? And again, let me find. Okay, good. Please go ahead.
Okay, so next slide, please. So this is about the use cases. So I skipped the first one, which was the first motivation. Well, there are several motivations actually to use them. And so, as you mentioned, there was the need to have something more fine-grained than a cost calendar, even with very small time slots, such as like 10 seconds or 15 seconds. But the story was about a UE willing to have a calendar of, I know how nice the connection quality is, but then on its own side, it can acquire an indicator saying that, okay, unattended data, for example, is allowed or not. And this hints whether the actual value given by the calendar tends to better or tends to worse. So, and there is now, there are those two other use cases, and I brought them here with respect to the exchanges we had with the Pan-RG people. And this was actually an older use case than the one of the calendar. Typically, when a user equipment wants to know via which access path to connect to an application endpoint. And it can use Wi-Fi or cellular. And this actually depends, the cost of the quality of the connection depends on access type and SLA, for example. There is another use case which is even older, which is related to CDN applications. And so some people raised the need to have a cost map where values were depending on qualitative criteria, such as policy. So the feeling is that it is cumbersome to define a metric associated to context C1 or C2 or Cn. It is cumbersome to get n cost map, especially because of time, because of volume. And actually, the client would be better off just having one metric value with n options. So next slide. Okay, so I introduced here the new use cases that are motivated by the discussion with the path-aware networking research group, and there was a meeting yesterday with a couple of nice presentations, and one of them was actually addressing the problem of an end system, an end host, trying to figure out the capability or the quality of the several possible paths it could actually take. Well, especially here with respect to connection. So, this is actually related to the use case 2 in the previous slide. So you would like to figure out, shall I use, I don't know, shall I use LAN, shall I use my phone, shall I use Wi-Fi, and on which equipment, and actually do I have an option at all? So that was actually, yeah, it relates to multi-path, but the purpose is not here to establish multiple paths, it's to allow the end host to have a clue of what, how the properties on some of the paths are. So next slide, please. Okay, so the approach to address these use cases is to extend the cost information specified in the base protocol by providing, so for a same cost metric, several possible cost value, where each value does depend on qualitative criteria as opposed to time-based criteria. So it does not depend on time, it depends on like access or SLA or UDA or what have you. So to this end, we propose to add a member called cost context associated to a cost type name in the IRD. So this cost context has members, cost type names, and a set of context parameters, which is an array of attributes array, who just indicate with respect to what you can have the value. And where these attributes can be combined among the attributes arrays. So we also add a member context param in the meta of Alto queries in responses that contain the combination of attributes that has been selected by the client. And as a result, the Alto server response is an array of value where each value corresponds to one of the to each combination. So the applicable Alto services, again, are filtered cost map and endpoint cost service. So next slide. So here you have an example. So in the IRD, so this is for use case 2. For example, so you have the routing cost, and here you have this member. So the context parameters, the context attributes with respect to which you can get your values are cell Wi-Fi LAN with SLA1, SLA2, SLA3. And for example, the client can request two combinations. So I want value for cell and SLA3 and also for Wi-Fi and SLA3. And then in the response, you have something like that. So this is the context parameter combination that has been selected by the client. And so it's the same as in the request input. And here you have the two values corresponding each to the combination. So next slide.
Oops.
So since the first version presented in Chicago, we have addressed the working group concerns, in particular on the near real-time changes in wireless networks. So in section 2.1, we have clarified the meaning of the example cellular connection cost, and we have named it abstracted RF cost, because RF cost has a connotation that may be worrying to, especially as Alto is not supposed to be a real-time information provider. So we also added definition on rules on context attributes and backwards compatibility. So in section 4, we mentioned that an Alto service must provide, of course, values as in the base protocol if no context attributes have been requested, or if it is not, if the client puts a combination that is not supported. So we updated the example combination in the IRD use case 1 and updated also the filtered cost map request and clarified some rewarding. So next slide. So here again, you have an example on the use case 1, because I think one of the discussions on this draft will be how to smartly arrange encode the logical combination of context attributes. For example, one design option is to encode the context parameters as like here. So which means here that so it's an array of arrays. So between the arrays, you have a end combination, which means that one or that one and that one or that or that. Where or is actually more related to a list. So next slide. So again, in the draft, so there is also the possibility that the client just extensively indicates all the combination it wants, meaning UDA and uplink, and so the response, of course, conveys all this combination, but we feel that this may be like too long, so we are trying to come up with a smart design, so every suggestion is more than welcome. So next slide. Okay, so then we come to the design choices and discussion. So we want to keep the cost type definition as specified in RFC in the base protocol. We want to keep listing the supported context attribute in information resources. So the attributes are encoded in JSON strings with constant value to moderate the number of context parameters and avoid too many indirection and workload for the server. The reason is that we figure that the context parameters are qualitative and expected to have few value. And there was a discussion on that topic with Richard, if I remember. So about the flexibility, the lack of flexibility to have like a list of hard-coded parameters. So because the first idea was to have only a number of value. So the question would be, can a context parameters take numerous values? And then in that case, isn't it actually rather a qualitative property or a qualitative metric? So that's the discussion actually I think we need to have. And yeah, if you can go back one slide. So yes, and of course, as I mentioned, come up with a smart design for logical combination of context attributes. And also we don't want to introduce any new media type. So next slide. So the next step is to collect the working group feedback on suggestions. and also to work on examples for the endpoint property service, and either to adopt extension or consider it for a next charter.
Okay. Thank you, Sabine. Any comments? Yeah, there are comments. Please.
Hi, Sabine. I remember that you have mentioned two possible solutions to provide the context parameters, right? One is maybe we can move the slides to the examples. Okay. Hi. Move the,
sure.
Yeah, this one is that the combination in each array is an O, and the combination between the array is an AND. One suggestion is that maybe we should make a specification for the order of this combination. For example, the returned value, the order of the returned value can be the UDN and uplink, then UDN and downlink, but it can also be the UDN and uplink, and then the UDNA uplink. Right? They are the possible concept combinations, and the situation might be more complex if the arrays are more than two. Maybe there are 3 arrays and 4 arrays, right?
Yeah, I started to play with 3 arrays, and of course we need to specify rules allowing the client and the server to understand how the combination, what the combination is, and how we map it to the array of returned values. That's for sure. And so definitely, yeah, this is actually more a list. And of course, we should also set rules saying that, okay, within, for example, you should not have an array with UDA and uplink. I mean, if you want to design an arrangement, so either you list extensively all the combinations, and then or then you can afford in one array, as in the other example, put UDA and uplink, UDNA and uplink. So this is one option, but it's kind of, it may become very long.
Yeah.
So, and this is the second option, trying to come up with a smart design and with rules explaining how you interpret this arrangement.
Yeah, that's mine.
Richard, before you go ahead, there's another comment on Meet Echo from Quao. The question is, would adding the context to the cost introduce extra privacy concern? Is that what you wanted to say, Richard, as well? Yeah. So the question is, does it introduce extra privacy concern? And he goes on, I presume that information such as cost of different SLA is private to only providers and the client who use the service. And I think it's a valid comment. I mean, some of this stuff is private. Yeah.
Yes, some of the stuff is private, but yeah, there is the concern that somebody can capture. So if my application within my phone, for example, sends a request, somebody could capture and find out which SLA I have. But on the other hand, it's, well, then I think the client should be aware of that. And if the client does not want to get the cost with respect to the SLA, then it does not request it. So
yeah, I'm not sure I buy that answer, because that means that the users are fully aware and the client might be embedded and they don't really know what's going on.
Okay.
So I remember in the beginning of the Alto working group, Rich Woundy always would say that he doesn't want other people to know what ISP contract he has, because he would think if he has the premium contract, then burglary is more probable and things like that. Whatever that means. I mean, just trying to give you an example that I think it's a good comment here, and you should definitely discuss it in the document. I mean, IETF RFCs now need privacy considerations as a must. So it's a must-have. So you should probably at least discuss it. Yeah.
yeah, so I agree, but I agree
Because if
with
you don't,
Michelle.
if it's any point in time this will move up to the IESG, you for sure will get these comments. So better to discuss it now if you want to move it ahead.
Yeah, so one option will be to make a section about awareness on privacy concern with respect to some of the context parameters.
Correct. Just discuss it. Yeah.
So Richard, and I do want to use this opportunity to generalize the prompt slightly more to an overall prompt and about the type system in Alto. So I believe this one would raise another issue somehow. It's about type system. So type system, of course, is a very general, very big problem in computer science. Again, a big part of computer science program language is about type systems, right? Because the philosophy of computer science always lately is use syntax to enforce semantics and to catch all the bugs and so on. That's why you move to a strong types design and so on. The very early part of Alto RPC 70 to 85 uses what I would probably call a hybrid type system. Hybrid in the following sense: for example, for every cost type, we have two members, and cost metric and cost mode. Cost mode indicate the data type, for example, numerical or ordinal, and cost metric denotes semantics. We do a cross product to indicate the type system. So that's why we import essentially the hybrid, and because we don't want to go over, for example, like Java, which you have to define. You cannot even define, for example, this type of system. You must say, for example, you cannot say int, or if you want to enforce other semantic, you cannot say, you say temperature. Temperature would give you more semantics, like type system. And for this one, if we add, by the way, I think from a semantic point of view, context parameter is wonderful, is very helpful. But from the grammar point of view, and then we probably will start to really break the type system in the sense that the return value now would be an array. But the cost mode will still be a numerical or ordinal. So which means now one part of type system say, okay, it's a number, and the other type say, oh, actually it's an array. We start to really see such a break. I don't know how to solve this problem. It's a very complex problem. And but overall, I think that's probably you are mentioning is that's why I need like clever encoding. But very likely my gut feeling is if we go move beyond to substantial, we probably need to come up with another type system. And I try to look at around even, for example, type system, Young model, and so on. They also cannot solve this problem at all. It's mostly the hybridization of you want to avoid generate a huge number of types. For example, some strong type system.
No, I understand. I mean, I think you made a valid point. In the end, it depends on also how flexible you want this to be. I mean, you could restrict it and then certainly make the problem a little bit smaller. But that's something that, yeah, I think it's future discussion.
Yeah, future discussion. Very likely, for example, what I'm thinking, but there's a big reason why Java eventually or C+ go to, for example, generic data types, template stuff. And that probably can solve this problem, but we probably should talk about this one. And of course, if we are willing to abandon or, for example, fully stretch the type system, we're okay, but otherwise we'll probably need to go to more complex type system. But I think from a semantic point of view, this is very useful.
There's Sabine. There's another. Thank you, Richard. I think that's a good long-term point for this document. There's another comment from Sebastian on Java, and he asks Sabine, the examples contain strings such as LAN, Wi-Fi, etc. Will they need to be defined and registered via YANA or in this document, or what is your view, or do you assume that a different document will? So his question is, the terms you use, are they? Do you think this document defines them, or do they need to be registered, or?
I think they would be need to be registered because as for the other working group draft, it may end up that we were required to, instead of using Wi-Fi and LAN, to use something like Blue or Sweet or Salt. So I think we with respect to everything relating to cellular and wireless, the next step will also include looking at the other IETF work to see whether they have registered such properties somewhere. And also, and if not, or if needed, consider also registering some of these properties to IANA.
Okay. I think we close this discussion now because we're running a little bit out of time, and this is not currently not a milestone item. But thank you very much, Sabine. From a chair perspective, I think this is interesting work. But again, it's not so. Currently, the milestone is addressed by your other document, so we have to see how this moves along. I guess for now we just you should move it ahead because certainly there seems to be interest in it, but we have to see how that fits in the current charter or if we how to proceed with it, right? Okay. Okay. So next up is, let me look at the agenda. The next one is incremental updates. Richard. Incremental updates. And you sent me an
Slides.
Is that the one?
Yes, it is. Okay, so I'll talk about incremental updates. And I believe this is a very important extension to Alto. We have done a lot of work already. But of course, I would always say that is essentially the main driving force is always Wendy, and she wrote the very first version. And mostly I'm trying to take over as to do a lot of revisions. But of course, I believe she will come back soon. And okay, so next slide, please. So here's an overview of what we have changed, because it's a very important capability. Therefore, it's making a lot of changes. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments. And so, high-level overview of summary is we have made quite a lot of changes. If you do a diff of RFC diff, you can see the two documents. You can see a lot of changes from 05, which is version 5 from March, IETF 98, to the current version, which is 07. A lot of changes. And the main goals of the change are two. Number one is we want to prepare for the review because I think there's tremendous push that we want to finish a document. And number two is actually very important drive to the change is handle new use cases. For example, the CDNI use case turns out to really be very, very beneficial to collaborate between the Alto working group and CDNI working group because the change made a lot of decisions eventually to be convincing. Otherwise, we cannot make those design decisions. And to summarize, we made 4 types of changes for this document. And one, make more generic statements and to be more generic. And number 2 is we want to make a benefit to be more explicit. I believe some people still not fully clear about the benefits. I restructured the document and make the text more friendly. But during launch today and with Sabine, maybe I did a bad job. So therefore, I might need to roll back some of the changes because I was trying to make it integrated. And last major change is we finally decided to add a JSON patch. So that is a major integration effort. So we're going to see a few more words. So next slides, please. So now let me first say a few words about the generic changes. And I would like to get an approval from the working group. So here's a comparison. I'm using RFC diff to really show the type of changes I'm making. And hopefully people are also easy to see. Because there's some comments last time was, is incremental updates essentially really limited to Alto or can be more broadly applicable? And therefore, the major change is we want to emphasize that the designs can be generic. So therefore, if you look at this document, for example, I'm only giving you a very simple example of changes which we made. And for example, the right-hand side is the older version, 05. The left-hand side is the newer version, which is 07. And even look at the first paragraph, for example, look at the first paragraph of the abstract. And the old version would say, Alto would have to make decisions. To that end, Alto server provides network and cost maps and using the maps, and Alto client can determine the cost and make a decision and so on. And if you look at the newer version, we essentially said, Alto is essentially providing information resources, and network maps and cost maps are essentially just simple examples. So there are a lot of such changes across the document, and we're trying to make sure that we're always talking about the generic resources and not specific cost maps or network maps. So that's one type of major change. Next one, please. Second one, which I really want to get across and get feedback and so on, is the following. Is that we want to emphasize that we want to provide 2 key types of benefits from this document. And I'm hoping that people all agree, and we will eventually, if there are additional reviews, I'm hoping that the people tell us, finally get across very well, or still not. We want to emphasize 2. One is the benefit is essential latency reduction, meaning the changes can be pushed immediately. So that's benefit number 1. And benefit number 2, we want to emphasize as well is that the changes is only incremental, meaning not the whole changes. Therefore, we want to get the 2 points across. Therefore, Sally will start restructure the document to make sure that both points are get across very clearly. For example, even look at the document over here, we said to achieve 2 benefits, 1 and 2. In the previous document, we're trying to use a slightly less structured wording and so on. And now we're hoping that this one really can get across. So that's the second major change. Is again around across the whole document to just make it clear. Next slide, please. So next one is a major restructure, and I would like to get feedback and get comments from people. So here is the right-hand side is old structure, and left-hand side is a newer structure. So if you compare these two structure changes, you can see the later part, we don't make a lot of changes. But in the earlier part, we did make a lot of changes. For example, one big part is we move a lot of stuff into the single background section. So we added terms section. We move a lot, for example, SSE, JSON merge patch, and JSON patch into the single background section in section 4. And in the previous design, actually, they are spread out all over the other sections. So now we decided let's really move everything into the single background. And then we have the overview of the background. And in the old version is we have the overview at the very beginning of the overall system. For example, section 2 now becomes section 5. And this may or may not be a good design because maybe people now, for example, when people are reading this newer version, is oh, what exactly is the bigger picture? So therefore, if people can read, give us a little bit of feedback about which one work out better, I think we are more than happy to really take a feedback and revise. So that's a major change. Okay, next slide, please. So next one, and which I really want to emphasize is finally we have decided to add into JSON patch into our design. Okay, the motivation is very simple, and motivation always clear to the working group for a while is the following: merge patch, JSON merge patch, which is I personally believe is quite elegant in many ways. You have a object model, and you send a merge patch. You don't even see much at all. And you merge the current model and the new patch incremental, you get a data encoding, very beautiful, very elegant, and a lot of like nonsense words at all. And but unfortunately, this one cannot handle arrays very well. For every single array, you have to change a single element in merge patch. You have to replace the whole array. And array can be large, for example, 1,000 or 2,000 numbers, and you have to replace the whole thing. The benefit of JSON patch, which RFC 6902, would allow you to do generic operations. And in particular, for example, it would allow you to do array operations. For example, take a look at a very simple example over here. And this is a network map, for example, to talk about groupings of the whole network and so on. The left-hand side is a network. For example, page 1 would have 2 IP addresses and 2 IP prefixes and so on. And you want, for example, make a simple change to really remove the prefix 192.0.20/24 from this array. In merge patch, you don't have choice. Must define page 1 to be the new array element, which, by the way, is not too bad in this example, but you cannot do like a delete element. But by introducing JSON patch, and you can see operation is replaced, and path is essentially the XPath model, and go to all the way, for example, this element. And you just say remove it. So therefore, suddenly now we can handle all arrays, which is incredibly new capability. And of course, if as a comparison for people who like elegance, you can say now they look a little bit personally less elegant because now for every single change, you need to specify what the operation is, which element you're modifying, and what the new value is. And you merge patch, you just don't specify. They just overlap overlay on top of it. So that's a major change. Next slide, please. So because of this change, and there's essential cascading changes across the document. For example, if you look at the old document in the capability in terms of information resources, in the old one, you always say, for example, hey, I'm a server, I can specify application merge patch JSON as my media type to really change do the incremental encoding. But now in the newer one, we have to see JSON patch and JSON patch or merge patch or combination of two. So therefore we have to have comma. So now suddenly we have to really, the server will say, I can encode all kind of types now. And now the server decision will become more complex. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so those are the major changes. Otherwise, the document has been pretty stable for a while now. And those are the major next steps which we're planning. And number 1 is we want to take a full pass and add all terms in the term section. And there's a review today, I think, or yesterday, asking us to really define a term section. Now we have placeholder, but we have not defined all the terms yet because we don't have the terms. Some utilization of terms somehow inconsistent, so therefore we're trying to take a pass. And number 2 is feedback from a couple of people. Is the following, that they want us to really have a consistent usage of all the requirement phrases, must, should, may, and so on, and somehow to put in a more consistent way. So therefore, I think we're going to take a pass to really address all those comments, number 2. And number 3 is, that's actually a comment which we decided to really accept, is that finish section 11.5, this new section in the document, which is say for all the future auto services, if you want to use incremental push, what kind of requirements you must have. Even though we say we want to be future-proof, I don't believe we can be future-proof. What if someone defines something really funny? Probably will not perform very well. So therefore, what we are asking is, we're trying to write up is the requirement section and say, okay, if you want this one, very likely this one will not be, for example, specific, you must and so on, would be recommendations. And okay, if you want to do this one, we recommend that you do the service in certain ways and so on. For example, it should be text-based, JSON-based, and so on. Otherwise, probably will not do very well. And our plan is to post a final version by August 4th. And that's our next step. And of course, the one issue which we don't plan to really address in this document, but the more and more we look at this stuff, we realize is probably working group should think about there should be a new patching method for JSON. Merge patch is very elegant, but unfortunately it has limitations. JSON patch is very like essentially powerful, complete, but somehow encoding is not elegant. And maybe actually it's a good time, given all these good use cases, maybe people should define a new incremental data encoding algorithm or specification for JSON objects. But of course, this is not probably belong to the Alto working group.
Right.
Therefore, will be something for other people to think about. And for us, the authors, we're going to be focusing on the top items.
Right. So as chair, I want to second what you emphasized, that this is something that, so the last point is something interesting to think about, but not within the current charter of the Alto working group.
Great. I totally agree.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Then we agree. So we have first, thank you, Richard. Any comments, questions? So I can make a personal comment. I think the addition of JSON patch was very important for the CDNI use case, which personally I'm very interested in. So this is not a chair comment, but a personal comment. The second comment which Chair had now on, I would like to make is also this one. Vijay and I discussed, we really want to move this to working class call. But as with Sabine's document, it seems you need to have another round of minor comments, at least you have to address. But also, I should have mentioned this before, I think lately we're seeing good discussions on the mailing list. So I think the working group is becoming more active, and we're having like cross-commenting. Some people read other documents. I think it's very good. So in fact, what we have here is all the result of the good discussion we have. So as chairs, we want to encourage that. Still, we would like to, move this sooner or later to be ready. So it seems to me, again, here I would like, I know maybe I don't have to, but I would like to hear if the working group agrees with Vijay's and my statement that this should be ready for working class call after the minor issues that you still have here need to, have been addressed. So if you think this is ready for working class call pretty soon, please hum now. Hello? Nobody's humming? If you don't think this is ready for working class call, please hum now. I think people were not aware that I'm taking a hum. So for the record, there was no reaction either way, but I think the discussion on the mailing list, actually lots of people have commented that they think this is ready, and the chairs think so too. Okay. You have a comment, Sabine? Yeah, please go ahead.
I would say that we had a discussion on that draft at lunch, and most of the content is here. But I think the main an important point would be really to structure and clarify the role and between who sends a request for what. This needs some additional rewarding or restructuring.
Wonderful. So let me respond to, I think Sabine trying to summarize the wonderful comment during lunch. And actually, I believe her comment actually the more substantial than the very short comment over here. And if you look at this increment updates, this one can not only be between a Alto client and Alto server. We always talk about we want, by the way, I think probably Sebastian will talk about is like inter-domain synchronization. If we want multiple servers to be synchronized, this one can be the protocol. So this one can be not only, for example, between Alto client and Alto server, can be the protocol for one Alto server to push updates to another Alto server to allow synchronization in a very compact, very nice way. The encoding is compact and the push is immediate. So therefore be very powerful. I think the Sabine wonderful suggestion would be so far this moment, we somehow implicitly assume it's client server, so therefore a lot of like interaction will be assumed to be implicit. I think Sabine's suggestion will be making this one more explicit, therefore make people can, that one can be eventually be applied to the setting of even synchronization. Of course, for this setting, which one is client, which is server, and it can be a client, it can be a server. I think that's a wonderful comment. And I don't believe so I can send a comment online or maybe in any wording, mostly like verbal, but I think that's a wonderful comment, which we plan to address probably immediately in the next few days.
I understand, but this also to me seems like a minor thing. In principle, it's just you need to rephrase that it's more explicit, right? You were assuming things implicitly, but yeah.
Correct. Right. So wording precise. I agree.
It's not a design change or anything.
Agree.
Okay. If there are no other comments, I would like to, because the agenda we are already a little bit behind, so I need to push. Thank you, Richard. The next document is CDNI footprints and capability advertisement. And Richard, you want me to present this one, right? Yeah. So I will present. Let's see if I can do that. So yeah, this is a document that actually, Richard, thank you very much. You resubmitted today under the working group item name. So actually, Richard and I had a Skype call a couple of weeks ago, and we were so busy with the content of the document that we issued a new version, but we totally forgot that it got accepted as working group item. So we did this now, and this has been handled. Let me just quickly move this to both sides. So as a reminder, I think we presented this last IETF as well. So the CDNI working group has decided to come up with a JSON format for what they call footprint and capabilities advertisement. And there's an RFC, which I'm co-authoring, by the way, or have co-authored, that defines this JSON object, but the CDNI working group does not specify how these JSON objects get from client to server, or vice versa, actually, server to client. So there has been a decision to define a new Alto service, and the CDNI working group has decided this, and we have moved this as a new milestone for the Alto working group. So the specification we need is a document that specifies how you transport these. We call them FCI JSON objects, footprint and capabilities interface of the CDNI interfaces, how you could transport these JSON objects via Alto. So yeah, I mean, last bullet here, of course, you want to do as much as you can with the regular Alto protocol we have, but in some cases we need some extensions, and this is exactly what we're exploring here. So I don't think, I think I explained this last time also, and I don't think we have to go into much detail here, but I think, Richard, you made these slides, thank you very much. I think that, they're very good. They give people, what we want to do here is give people an example how this looks like. So the semantics are pretty much specified in RFC 8008. We have another CDNI document that says the media type is application/CDNI. So, and here you have an example also on the right side how these JSON objects look like. We have another RFC that defines what a footprint is. I think this is RFC 8006's CDNI metadata document. CDNI was a bit complicated where we put it. Also, Richard, we had a discussion. The CDNI working group was not very good at putting all the registries into a single document, so they're scattered around a bit. So this is why it might be a little bit confusing. So this just to summarize what has been defined before. Well, what we need to do now is come up with a new Alto service that can, transport these documents, and this is rather generic. So this is actually a summary of what the CDNI working group has decided. Why use Alto? Because there's service discovery, there's a good transport for JSON objects ready with error handling. Actually, security was a thing we discussed. I don't think it's even here on the slide. Versioning. So Alto has everything, and also now incremental updates. So yeah, if you look at the original Alto protocol, this is how this could look like. You would have a new media type that you'd say application CDNI that you could ask for, and you would get it. So I don't think there's much to say here. This, I think, is a better, for people who are not familiar, this is what we're actually talking about. So you're looking at an FCI object and will be of type application/CDNI. And, well, it would use the regular Alto error handling. I think, Richard, the point, we should discuss this maybe later on. The second point you make here, we need to agree on the name of this envelope. I think Kevin used to have an old draft where it's called CDNI FCI. I think that's what I would probably use here too, for the capabilities envelope, so to speak. But these are the documents, sorry, the JSON objects we're basically talking about. Richard, you have actually done a good job at looking at error handling with your team because you're the expert on the Alto error handling. And it seems to be that the actual Alto error codes we have are sufficient. So we might have something that is very CDNI specific, but also from my perspective, if the regular Alto error codes work more or less, I think we shouldn't do much more here because we don't want to, specify too many little things. If this works, and this seems to be the case, the regular error handling is pretty okay. The thing that we did need to update, and Richard, you just presented that this is the incremental updates. So it turned out that JSON merge patch was not sufficient to do incremental updates with the CDNI objects. So now the latest SSC document, the Alto incremental updates document, also has JSON patch. And with JSON patch, this is very, we can also do incremental updates for CDNI objects, which was actually a key requirement also from the CDNI working group. So for CDNI, it's actually very important that you can do incremental updates. Yeah, I don't want to discuss if it's more important than for the peer-to-peer use case. That's a lengthy discussion you can have, but it's certainly very important for CDNI, for CDNs that interconnect to do incremental updates and server-initiated updates. So there we have JSON patch now. So that issue is basically solved. Yeah, here now, Richard, I'm presenting this. I might have a slightly different opinion than you. I think I appreciate that you look into advanced design. So maybe you can also comment here a bit. There are, of course, things you can do better. You can do advanced filtering of FCI because the current filtering is not designed to do that in the Alto protocol. You can do other things that are, integrating Alto with FCI. There are certainly certain things you can do. But maybe I have my chair hat on when I move to the next slide, that the current draft focuses on the basic design. So I would like to emphasize this because, again, this is a milestone we have on the charter. And I was saying in the beginning, Vijay and I really would like to finish this. So now I have my chair hat on. So we think the basic design is actually feasible in the next couple of weeks, months to get done. And then we have to go from there. But I personally think that the current document we have would just do the basic design and leave further optimizations for further documents. And we really intend to work on this in August. Here you have a time frame that we really try to move this ahead. So with that, I go to the. So yeah, actually, this is actually the last slide. So what we try to do in this presentation, give the working group an overview of what we're doing, since it's a working group item now. So we actually think that we can, what we call the basic design, move ahead pretty quickly. So error handling seems to be done. Incremental update seems to be done. We just need to, if you look at the current document, you'll see that we need a little more. It's not ready, but we don't envision major, design choices anymore. So the major ones we just presented. So yeah, we want to move this ahead and then, yeah, get it done as fast as possible. But you never know if during the work you find out something that needs a little more attention, then we should raise it in the negatives. Since we're already running a little bit behind, I would stop talking now. Are there any comments on this document? Richard.
Make one. Can you go to slide number 7? So I do want to get a working group opinion. Yes. Oh, one more maybe. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, like make a number smaller, like maybe 5. Oh yeah, no, next. Yeah, this slide. So I do want to get the people feeling about, for example, the envelope. For example, for the object, for example, look at all the Alto object would have a meta. The meta information about, for example, what version it is and what resource is related to server 4 is a very nice transport framework. And for all the real object, there's always an envelope name. For example, we have network map, we have a cost map, we have all the stuff. The convention we use in the past always is we take a media type and extract the media type as envelope name. For example, in the past, we have application/auto/network map plus JSON, and application/auto cost map /JSON, and so on. That's why we got an envelope. But unfortunately, CNI naming is does not have plus JSON, so therefore there's inconsistency over here. So, but like I said, I'm fine with CDNI/FCI. But if other people have strong opinions about envelope, and I'm more than happy to listen. So that's a quick comment. I know that's probably
yeah. maybe I can just say my opinion. I mean, the CDNI specifications are done, so there's not much we can do here. I don't see this as a major problem. It's not nice, but yeah. I guess you're referring more to extensibility, right? If there would be different CDNI objects that we would transport, and yeah. So I think if we leave it as the upper type as it is, I think it's okay. But the CDNI on the lower part, where you say need to agree on something, we should call CDNI FCI to be able to in the future have other types of things we want to transport there. Any other comments? Okay, so anyway, this is work in progress. We don't want to, there are not, many decisions we need to ratify here during this meeting, so we just wanted to update you. So I go back to my chair place and I try to get up the next presentation. So the next presentation is sorry, give me a second. The next presentation is path vector. So Dawn, right? Yeah. And you sent an update, right, on path vector? Yeah. Let me just get it. Is that the? I think that should be the latest one. Yeah. That's the one from this morning. So please go ahead. So this is again a milestone. But as a reminder, we think this needs a little bit more work, but of course we want to progress it. So please go ahead.
Yeah, the path vector draft is to address network graph milestone, and we have achieved an agreement to adopt this draft as a working group document. Recall that 3 main issues are raised and some initial solutions are proposed at the 98 meeting. And during the 98 meeting and 99 meeting, efforts are made to finalize these design issues. Let's review the 3 design issues. The 3 issues are divided into 2 categories: the response format and the request format. The response format includes the information structure of providing path vectors and how to encode each part of the information structure. The request format includes the query format for clients to get the path vector information. Next slide. So start with the information structure to provide path vector informations. To remove the redundancy, we have separated the complete path vector information into 2 parts: a cost map and a property map. They together providing the path vector information. So the problem is how to provide these 2 maps to clients. A Stroman approach is that we extend the current cost map structure to enable a cost map data and a property map data into a single response. This solution actually breaks the current structure of the cost map and the media type. So another solution that is adopted at the last meeting is that the path vector information, that is the cost map and the property map, are sent with 2 separate responses. That is encoded into 2 separate messages. We use the current cost map to provide the information of abstract network elements and a property map to provide the properties of abstract network elements. This solution works, but introduces a new problem as the snapshot consistency. So our decision made this time is that we will keep on solution 2. That is, we keep the auto cost map media type, keep its structure, and we still use the property map to provide the properties. And the 2-step query mentioned last time is still applied to support that the client may independently query the property maps for several times as it likes. A major change is that we introduce a new media type to deal with the problem of snapshot consistency. It is that the media type is named multi-part/related, and the details of this media type is defined in the IFC 2387. This media type enables multiple resources in a single response. So let's use an example to see how this media type works. If the client needs multiple resources in a single response, it has to declare in its accept field of the HTTP request to include 3 media types together, the multi-part-related, and together with the auto cost map and auto property map. So a typical response would include all these 3 informations. First, the multi-part/related media type is to indicate that this response includes multiple responses, and a boundary name is used as a separator between the different responses. So here we use the 2 dashes followed by the boundary name to indicate the start of each response, and 2 dashes followed by the boundary name and 2 dashes to indicate the end of the whole response. After deciding the information structure of the path vectors, we need to decide how to encode each part of path vectors. So to provide path vector information in a cost map, we have to know what the exact cost type is. A cost type includes a cost mode and a cost metric. In the existing design idea, a cost mode indicates the data types of related value. For example, the cost mode being in numerical or ordinal implies that the cost value is a float or int number, respectively, and a cost metric indicates the semantic meaning of the returned value. So to be consistent with current design, the cost mode for path vector must indicate that each element in the cost map is an array object consisting of ANEs. The cost metric have to indicate that the return value is a path consisting of ANEs. So we introduce a new cost mode with a new cost type with a cost mode being encoded in the string array, and the cost metric being encoded in the string ANE-path. After dealing with the response format of path vector information, we come to discuss about query format. Current design ideas is that we only support the cross-product query format of the auto service. This query format introduces some problem. For example, when the client is only interested in 2 independent flows, but when using the cross-product queries, it has to query 4 related flows. Next. So at the 98 meeting, we have proposed a new query format support the core flows. It works well, but then we found it is not necessary to introduce such core flow extensions. So we have moved this part to the extensions in the FCS draft. We found that Without extended core flow query format, the server is still able to provide the correct information of path vectors. And once the client wants to use this path vector information efficiently, it can just set the unrelated flows to 0 to remove the influence of those unrelated flows.
How many slides more do you have? We are running a little bit behind schedule. Just one or two? Okay.
So with all the decisions made, we have come to the specification part. We extended extension current version tag object to include an optional field query ID and an extension to the ID resource entry to include an optional field named property maps for clients to query the property maps. And only the response part of the cost map or the endpoint cost map is extended. That is, the VTag field must be included in the cost map or an endpoint cost map, able to provide the query ID information. Another decision is that when the client wants a multi-resource response, it has to provide the multi-part / related media type. And the extension for the property map is that in the accept input parameters of the property map, it has an optional field query ID. It is related to the VTag field of a cost map or an endpoint cost map. So the next steps for the path vectors is that we will add the consistency principle in the text, and the security informations may need to be specified more clearly in the next phase.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. So I want to actually say that I'm very happy that we've seen lots of discussion on also this document on the mailing list and comments. So my question is, are there any other questions? We are running quite a bit behind schedule, so if there are no important issues that somebody wants to raise, I would rather like to move on, because as we said in the beginning, we don't want to hum on this one today anyway. It's good work in progress, and I thank you for updating us on the design choices you made. My question is maybe to the authors, Dawn, Richard, how much more work does this need from your perspective?
Okay, I do want to actually raise one thing. Would be probably the single biggest feedback which one thing from working group is following is the adoption of multi-part encoding. So if we accept that one, then we're opening, and I don't believe it has a lot of complexity. Essentially following, for example, RFC, all the email, they're all use multi-part encoding. And if we allow this one, suddenly we have tremendous new capabilities to transport all the network information resources. That's the major design decision. I think any feedback or strong objection from the group will probably be as early to know as possible would be wonderful.
Lyle Burtz, I'll give you that feedback right now. So actually, the multi-part is something we have typically in standard libraries and designs for code. So this is good. I don't mean to be a wet blanket about SSE, but this does raise the question as to this technique, which is usual and customary in terms of event processing. You know, should we, and I hate to suggest it, but I'm going to, but should we consider maybe, at least for the moment, looking at this technique being pushed back into SSE? Because the technique we're doing in SSE with the event boundaries, right, is something that would be a little bit odd to parse from a developer perspective, and this is actually very good in the sense that it's usual and customary.
I mean, if that's what people, if you as an implementer or speaking for implementers feel that way, I certainly don't have lots of objections. I mean, it certainly would slow down the publication of SSE, but
it would be consistent.
Right. So I mean,
Alto.
right. If it's a valid point, we should consider it. Yeah.
Right.
So, are there any other opinions? Maybe Dawn, Richard, do you want to comment on that?
I do think about that, but that's one.
It would be helpful, for someone who hires people to have a consistent skill set that's very consistent with engineers who actually mime multi-part and a lot of the mime related stuff is understood. It's a little esoteric, but I can point them to specs. The SSE spec looks a little odd from that perspective as a hiring manager for devs. So.
So the impact also beyond SSE. This one
Yeah. This is great. It just raises the question of consistency.
Yeah, again, as chairs, we are really concerned on making progress with respect to publishing RFCs, but at the same time, we don't want to do that at the expense of doing something that is inconsistent or doesn't make a lot of sense. So,
Yeah. Just setting the boundary, really, right? So
I think that's wonderful.
yeah. So yeah, let's discuss it and on the mailing list maybe or further. And I mean, SSE is still not done, so there's still a good opportunity. If it were already, Lyle, if it were a little bit further down the road, okay, but at this point, it's probably still a good chance that we.
Yeah, it's good. Actually, the timing is perfect because otherwise, if SSE already finalized, we probably cannot really do it.
This is probably one of the last times we can accept it. There's another comment. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so from Chao Chang. Quick comment for issue 3. The cross-product query and response would give the Alto client information more than she needs, implying privacy leak. On the contrary, the PID flows does not have this issue.
Pardon? One more. Is it about the security problem? Yeah, I think there is some trade-offs here. For example, when cross-product queries are sent, the server is going to send the more detailed information maybe about the network. And if we use this cross-product information query format, what can we benefit? I think it may be that the client is able to hide its possible data sets. For example, if the client query exactly with the core flow query format, it may.
Maybe I can shorten this discussion. I think if you look at the comments, I think it's a good comment. So basically, he's saying cross-product query might have a privacy implication, and PID flows don't. But I think you should just discuss it with your maybe on the mailing list, but also with the authors. Either way, I mean, either you consider it and you go for one or the other, or if you go for something that has privacy implications, as I was mentioning to Sabine before, just mention them explicitly, right? Add a privacy considerations discussion section and discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay, but I think Don, you can stay because you have the next presentation, right? Unified props, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we have only 5 minutes, so I hope you can make it in 5 minutes. You have allocated 5 minutes, and we are running 10 minutes behind, so I can only give you 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
I'll try.
Next slide.
Yeah, next slide. So updates where we have made about the property map is that according to the to-do list from the IETF 98 meeting. First, we have specified a single property namespace. That we underline that the document defines the unified property names specified in a single property name space rather than being scoped by a specific domain. Another thing is that we generalize the dependency relationship to general case. The older version draft only mentioned the PID domain will depend on network map, and we also propose that any domain will depend on a cost map or an endpoint cost map, and maybe other new proposed domain may depend on other resources. And another thing is that we declare that the longest prefix match rule for the IPv4 and IPv6 domain will not introduce multiple inheritance. And a small mistake corrected is that value for the property value for the this IPv4 address is V1 rather than V2. And if there is n network maps, the server is able to provide maybe n+1 maps of the internet address entities to property values. For multiple domains and multiple properties capabilities, if the server declares multiple domains and multiple domain types and multiple property types in a single capability, it has to ensure that each property type is supported by each domain, or it has to separate them into different services.
Not working, huh? How about this? I'm sorry. Now.
And the uses field in the resource entry is that if a property map, so the use case is that if a property map depends on network map resources, it has to declare that it only depends on a specific network element resource, but not maybe 2 or more. And the general case is that the uses field must not contain 2 resources of the same type. And then we clarified that the value for the type property value to be defined to have no value must be adjacent non-value. The section 5.5 is the same as the section 4.5, is to declare the uses field in the resource entry. And the ANE domain that we propose a new domain named ANE, and the domain-specific entity address is the same as the PID name specified in the RFC 7285. There is no hierarchy or inheritance rule associated with this domain, and the relationship to cost maps and endpoint cost map needs to be discussed more.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many more do you have? Because
Just 2.
Just one.
So the next steps for this draft is that we are going to specify more clearly the relationship between the ANE domain and the cost map or an endpoint cost map. And we have found an interesting example of a Hadoop system to make use of the property map. This may require a new domain, and we have not settled this. So the use case is that if the client needs the data set X as an input, and X actually has several copies, maybe for copies in data node N1 and N2, the client will decide which data node to get the data based on the distance of each node. And the the distance is computed by the client itself, but however, the client requires the network location property of each domain. This is provided by the service, but not the client itself. So the unified property map is going to provide the network location property of each node, and a possible request and response format will be like this. We'll use the property map to query with entities N1, N4, and the properties being network location. And the property map will return to the client where this node locates. It may be located in data center 1 and rack 1 and node 1, or it may be located at the data center 2 and the rack 2 and node 4.
Don, I'm sorry, we have to finish this because I think we already have 2 presentations that will not make it today because we're running behind schedule. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just finished.
Yeah, this is the last one. Okay.
In time.
So since we're running behind schedule, I don't think we should have a discussion on this, or I would refer discussions to the mailing list. To the authors, as for my chair head on now, I'm not sure I'm happy that you're introducing new use cases and new stuff because we want to move this ahead. That's all I can say. Okay. So please try not to come up with new use cases every two months, because then we will never get it done.
Okay.
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 Okay, but anyway, I think they were also here. We had some discussion, and I think it's moving ahead. So it's good. It's good work. I just fear that it gets out of it will not get done by the time we want. Okay, thank you, Don. So the next presentation is actually I'm presenting on behalf of Sebastian and Martin on the cross-domain server discovery. And this can actually be a very short presentation, I think, or I hope. So I will go to the mic. So again, I'm presenting this on behalf of Sebastian and Martin, who are the authors. This has been adopted as a working group item at the last IETF, and they have issued now already the 0.1 version. So just to remind everybody, what this is all about is basically to find a new server via DNS records, or sorry, an Alto server. And basically, I'm reading here the intended semantics. You can say, if you're an ISP or IT department who controls something, you can say, okay, if you want to optimize your traffic to or from this prefix, query the Alto server, which you can find here, right? So yeah, it's a classic, it used to be called third-party server discovery, but for various reasons, it changed. So basically, the whole goal is that you can find a server that is not necessarily the closest by, but one that is actually the one that can give you better information from an Alto perspective. This has been around. We've discussed this many times. So I go to the next slide. The only recent changes are really small ones. So the algorithm has been changed that it can also handle IP prefixes as a parameter and not only IP addresses. This is a really small change. And there have been some clarifications regarding the usage of Alto maps and map filtering services. So as I was saying in the beginning of this session, we, the chairs, think this is ready for working group last call. Because again, it has been around, we've discussed it, the working group has said many times that we want this kind of solution. And also the authors have agreed that this is pretty mature. So we don't think there's much to do here. Again, I'm asking the people in the room, are there any comments otherwise? Yeah, Richard, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So I did send out my part one review, I think this morning or yesterday, I forgot. And I like it. I think this is very useful. My only, I guess, roughly comment, mostly the editorial, would be somehow if we can call out the principle. For example, I believe it's using somehow expanded the ring search, something like that, or gradually like hierarchical search, make the principle more clear. Probably be helpful. But of course, mostly this editorial.
I saw the discussion. I haven't read all the emails, but I think Sebastian actually replied and said that they're going to look into it, right? That's at least what my understanding. So it's a good comment. Obviously, we don't want to push things if there are still comments or concerns. But I understood your comment as something that is also something that can be handled rather quickly. So yeah, I think that this work is really, so Vijay and I think this is ready for working group last call. So probably, is Sebastian saying something? Oh, he joined the queue. He wants to say something. I'm on the mic. Can somebody, Sebastian, if you want to say something, type it in Jabber and maybe Lyle can read it or something. Am I the only one in Jabber? I can check it. Hold on. I cannot present and read my Jabber at the same time, guys. So where's Java? Is he saying something? Okay. So Sebastian is saying, of course, I will look into Richard's comments. So I think that doesn't change anything on what I was saying. I go back to the last slide. Hold on. Give me a second. So I think the authors and the chairs think this is almost ready for working group last call, or pretty much. So I think they will review Richard's comments and issue a new version rather soon, and then we can go to working group last call. And I don't hear any other opinions here in the room. So I think this is pretty much it. Okay, since we are running behind schedule, I will just move on to the next presentation. So I think we have now discussed all the chartered items. I hope so. Let me get back to the agenda. So we have basically now have we have 15 more minutes, and we have 3 scheduled presentations that are not chartered items. So I would say I give each of them 5 minutes to be fair. So the first one is Sabine with cellular address extension, and then we have Jay with flow-based cost query, and then we have Q with resource orchestration. And I think the last ones are remote, so we see how we can handle it. But Sabine, please go ahead with cellular address extension. And again, everybody, please stick to your 5 minutes to be fair, right? So, right, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this is actually resuming a couple of discussions we had since a couple of months ago. So next slide, please. So here, the draft is very short. I wanted to start a mailing list discussion, and I found it more convenient to just drop a draft. So this is a list here of related Alto work that involves cellular networks. And this list is pretty much the same as the one in the cost context draft. So we would like to have cellular endpoints for Alto cost context, for Alto performance metrics, for extensible property maps. So when listening to Dawn's presentation, I was figuring whether we can have an address domain for sales. And of course, endpoint property service. If I want to query some properties on the cell I'm connected to. And given the Alto-based protocol is specified with endpoint addresses, endpoint having cellular IP or v4 or IPv6 addresses, but nothing precludes in the protocol to have something else than IP addresses. So, and we also had discussed it in the last IETF. So next slide, please. So, okay, so this is again just a reminder for the interest in general in IETF that is growing on multiplicity of endpoint access types. So next slide, please. So there was some previous Alto work and design choice. So there was the work from Lyle and the work presented in IETF 91, I guess, for Alto for wireless networks. So typically, cell is associated to a PID, and we would like to have cellular address on this PID. So the proposal comes from the draft Alto in wireless access networks, and the idea is to mimic the format of ECGI, which stands for EU Transcell Global Identifier. So next slide. So basically, this is almost the same content as the draft. So it's really like 2 or 3 pages to read. So so this would be the address format as specified for ECGI. So you have the mobile country code, and then you have the mobile network code, and then you have the EU Transcell identifier. So the discussion for a future version will be about those leading zeros. I'm not so sure about how we will do, given the fact that there you have MCCs coded 0, 20, MCCs coded 20. So I leave it to the specialists. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this is an example, and again, so this is an example. So nothing much to say about that. And next slide, please. Yeah, so the cellular, the cell ID format for Alto could have 3 formats, either just the mobile country code, or the mobile country and network code, or the total with a mask. And so this is, and with some rules saying that, okay, so with some matching rules obliging that you have at least a match between the MCC and the MNC. So next slide, please.
How many more slides do you have, Sabine?
Yeah, I think it's the last one.
Okay, good.
Actually, it's just summarizing. So this is again an example, so you can skip it.
Mhm.
And the next slide, yes, next step will be to look at other IETF proposals for the cell address format, validate this format or another one with respect to working group discussions, introduce cell addresses in working group documents, especially performance metrics, cell entity domain identifier for the unified property draft, use also endpoint properties, filtered cost map, and endpoint cost map. And also use this format when we will discuss rechartering items involving cellular networks. And I would like to thank Wendy for initiating this work.
Okay, thank you, Sabine. Thank you also for staying in time. Any quick comments? Yeah.
Lyle Burtz, the leading zeros is only for frame alignment over wire protocols, so we can maintain an LR0 parser. So just ignore them.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So next is Jing Xuan, if I'm pronouncing it correct. And he's presenting via Meet Echo on FCS. So let's see how this works. I mean, I can put up his slides, but
Hello?
Meet Echo,
Hello? Can you hear me?
yeah, we
Okay.
can.
Okay, great.
Hold on, let me just, you just send me new slides, right? So flow-based cost query, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can see it. So I will quickly go through our update of flow-based cost query since our last meeting. Next, please. And here is an overview. Since IETF 98, we have updated 2 revisions of this document. We introduce a bigger architecture to claim why we need the auto extension such as FCS, and we make some revision to target more extensible design and consistent semantics. Next, please. And this page, we will give an overall architecture about our vision for Alto. This is the general popular architecture of current SDN solution. The next, I can see the slide now. It is the page 3 now.
Yes, I'm presenting page 3 now, yes.
Okay.
You want to go to 4?
Thank you. Okay, that's fine. So the core component is SDN controller, which exposes southbound interface, northbound interface, and east-westbound interface. And our final target is to make Alto provide the unified network view for northbound and east-westbound interfaces. And next, please.
So we are on slide 4 now.
Okay, thank you. So to formulate our objective precisely, we decompose each Alto query service as a function whose input is a network information query space, and the output is some specific network view. And here is some examples. And next, please. And from this insight, we consider the general requirements are 2 items: the more flexible input and more flexible output. The many ongoing Alto extensions like path vector, unified property, metric cost, and the cost calendar are targeting the more flexible output, but FCS is focusing on more flexible input. Specifically, FCS has 2 requirements. The first one is to provide more flexible shape of the query space. And the second one is to provide more expressive encoding of the query entry. Next, please. So from these requirements, we have three major design decisions. What's the query schema, what's the entry encoding, and how to provide the validation. And the following is the current decision of in our documentation. So next, please. And if we go some details about the query schema, we make some small change on the address-based schema since IETF 98. Currently, the value of the endpoint flows field is an array of endpoint filter instead of the array of source destination pairs, which can reduce some overhead. And next, please. I think it's page 8 now. To target more expressive entry encoding, we have created some new auto address type registry. For example, the ETH, HTTP, FTP, TCP, and UDP are the new accepted address types. But it conducts some further issues. For example, if an endpoint filter conducts a FTP type source address and a HTTP type destination address, this query should be invalid because FTP conflicts with HTTP. So next, please.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you wrap up a bit because we
Yeah,
still have 4 hours?
Yeah, it's the next. It's the last page.
Okay.
Okay. So there is a remaining issue. If we consider this example, in this query, we have two endpoint filter. The first one is valid, but the second one is invalid. The legacy auto protocol will return an error message directly. So the auto client has to resend the filter 1 and filter 2. But in our question is, it is possible to return the response, the valid part, with the error message for the invalid part. We have a simple solution as option 1, but we are considering whether we can provide an automatic conflict avoidance mechanism. For example, in this case, UDP is a specific type of IPv4 or IPv6, so the auto server can reduce the source endpoint address to an IPv4 address and return the cost between it and the HTTP address. Okay, so the last page is the next step. We will finalize the design decisions, and we want to make the use case of SCS clearer. So next question, I have done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we move on to the next presentation just to be fair. So if there are any comments or discussions, please people put them on the mailing list so we can discuss.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for joining remotely, Jensen.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is Wow, if I'm pronouncing it correct, probably not.
This is Xiao, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to find your presentation, and that is the resource orchestration, right?
Yes, yes.
And you sent me a new one?
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thanks. This is Xiao presenting remotely for the auto use case resource orchestration for multi-domain data analytics. This is a joint and public project between different university and CERN. Next, please.
Yep.
And yeah, this is a quick takeaway from last IETF meetings. And we propose that not only Alto can be used to provide network information so that to speed up dataset transfers, it can also provide information on different type of resources so that it can help improve the performance of data analytics applications. And based on this proposal, we designed a multi-resource orchestrator for the compact immune solenoid applications called EXO. And next, please. So this is a quick update, the latest update for the draft. And we expand the application scenarios from the resource illustration for science applications to a more generic unified resource illustrations for geo-distributed multi-domain data analytics, and we named the framework to be called Unicorn. We described the key component of Unicorn. It consists of a set of tools to manage the dynamics of the resource demand and supply, and of course, it has an orchestrator to match the demand with the resource supply. And we restructured the document by adding by updating the abstract and discussion sections, and we add several examples and describe the detailed workflow of the whole framework for the working group to review. We can jump to slide 7.
Okay. I'm trying. 7, okay.
Yes. So yeah, so this is why we want to use Alto in our framework. This is mainly because the existing resource management systems such as HCondor, Mesos, and so on, they only provide coarse-grained information on resources and may lead to inefficient resource allocation decisions. But on the contrary, Alto will provide on-demand fine-grained information on different types of resources to support the optimal resource orchestration for data analytics jobs. And we can jump to slide number 10. So yeah, in the last meeting, we already gave a quick example about how Alto can provide such information. So here is the architecture of the Unicorn. So to manage the resource demand dynamic, we provide a workflow converter and the demand estimator to automatically find the optimal configurations for different data analytic jobs. And on the resource supply, side, we use Alto client to issue a series of queries to the Alto servers to get the resource informations corresponding to certain data analytic jobs. And we use a resource view extractor to assemble and compress such information into an abstract view of resources. We can go to next slide. So in addition to the base services proposed in RFC 7285, we also Unicorn also benefits substantially from several Alto extensions, including the unified property, the path vector, the cost calendar. All this here has been adopted, and also the resource view extractors use the algorithm proposed in the Alto routing state abstraction job, and also we include the flow cost services to retrieve more fine-grained information about different type of flows. Go to slide 14.
14. Yeah, and
yes,
I think then
14.
we have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
So yeah, just a quick summary. So Unicorn basically provides a template architecture for data center resource optimizations, and this is a major use case for Alto in the working group charter. And like I just said, in addition to the base Alto protocol, it applies several Alto extensions and to collect resource information from different sites. And this is an informational draft, and it provides key insight and experience in the deployment of different types of Alto services and very large and public data analytics project. So the next step for us is to continue to document and the design and the experience of Unicorn. And also we are still on the right track with the with the milestone for pre-production deployment by IETF 100, and hopefully for production deployment by IETF 103. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we are over time. So also here, if people have comments, please do them on the mailing list. But thank you for this update. And I'm happy that we managed actually all the scheduled presentations. And I think we made good progress also with the chartered items. So yeah, with that, I close. And again, most likely we're going to have next virtual interim meeting. But we have to see, and we will post that on the mailing list. So thanks, everybody. And yeah, let's keep moving the drafts along. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.